So I am going to get started. Welcome everyone. Hello to our Merrick patrons and viewers near and far. We are live. Welcome to the latest episode of Top Shelf Live at Merrick Library. I'm your host, librarian Carol Ann Tack, and this episode of Top Shelf Live is our book club edition because it's National Reading Club Month. So to help celebrate, as you can see, we have such a special guest tonight, none other than Gretchen Anthony for her incredible third novel, The Book Haters Book Club. I swear we rehearsed it. It did not go upside down when I rehearsed it. But of course, during live, this is what's going to happen. Yes, Kayla, we love reading books, right? Everybody loves reading books. You guys know the drill. Pop a comment in. I swear I will try to read them all, but once I start yapping, it's pretty hard. So that's the book we're talking about. Gretchen Anthony, allow me to welcome you back to the Merrick Library. Thank you for taking the time to be here. As I've said probably 16 or 17 times, I am so happy to see you.
I know, the same is true. The same is true for me.
Oh my gosh. Guys, if you have any questions or comments or just to say hello, put your comments in the comment box that's at the bottom of your screen. So a lot of people may not know, but for me and Gretchen Anthony, this is not our first rodeo.
No.
We have been doing this kind of thing in some form or another for a long time. So I got introduced to Gretchen Anthony from her very first book. So book club people out there, get your pens ready, place your holds, go to your local independent bookstores because Gretchen Anthony hits the mark every time with every book for book discussions. Honest to goodness, I'm telling you the truth. I got this book, sorry, it's backwards, Evergreen Tidings from the Baumgartners as a galley. I don't even remember who sent it to me, but I started reading it. I got to the last page. I immediately reached out and said, hey, you want to be on my podcast? I think it was 2017, maybe. This came out in what, 2018?
2018.
So I think I read it in the fall, and then I hosted you, and then you came to the Merrick Library via Skype. Remember Skype? I don't know if that's a bad word or not. And we hosted in the building. 50 people came out to see you for this book.
And they had great questions. I remember that. It was so much fun. I could have gone all afternoon.
And they kicked us out of the room because someone else needed it. And the book discussion people were still there. We were having such a great time. Then you follow that up with an award-winning novel called The Kids Are Gonna Ask. The reason I love this book is because it's considered a crossover. So that means you find the young adult person in your life and you both read this. You could have your own book club, just the two of you, the three of you, the four of you, and you read this book together because there are so many things, so many topics. And let me tell you, if you're new to Gretchen Anthony, her character development is spot on. So if anyone's out there watching, if you haven't figured out already, this is the Gretchen Anthony fan club right here. Right here. But today we are here to talk about the amazing Book Haters Book Club. I love this book. I'm not going to say any more about it. If you wouldn't mind, tell everybody who's on with us, tell us about the Book Haters Book Club.
Oh, Carol Ann, you always just fill my heart. I have been looking forward to this discussion for so long. I honestly think I will get to the book, but I honestly think you might have been like the first podcast I did or something like that.
Maybe.
And I remember, my second book revolves around a podcast. There's a podcast at the heart of it. So I've been a huge podcast fan forever, but I think yours was the first one I was featured on. And I was like, I didn't know what to expect going in, and you just made it so easy. And in fact, it was such a fun discussion that then, all the podcasts I've been in are on and interviewed by, they're all lovely people, but sure. I don't know, there's chemistry and then there's just good conversation. You know what I mean? So thank you very much. You kind of spoiled me from the very beginning. But
oh my gosh. And the other thing is, after all this time, you still put up with my New York accent. So listen,
Yeah,
That's
well,
a run for me.
you're speaking to a Minnesotan. I can. I can talk like a Minnesotan for the rest if you'd like.
I will listen to whatever you do, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, so the Book Haters Book Club, yes, it's my third novel. And it's, I live in Minnesota now. I grew up in Minnesota and then moved away for close to 20 years. And swore I was never going to come back because it's cold here in the winters. But it's, there's something magical about Minnesota. And my husband has a theory that all Minnesotans come back and eventually. And in 2020, well, we've been back here since 2011, and it wasn't until I came back to Minnesota that I really found my voice, my writing voice, and that I got very serious about fiction. And in 2020, July 2020 is when The Kids Are Gonna Ask came out, and it just so happened to be like a week after the George Floyd tragedy, and there was just, I mean, 2020 was
a train wreck.
It was a train wreck, right? And I started, now in retrospect, the book took me forever to write, but what I was searching for as I was writing this book was a place of comfort. Mm-hmm. And so I created this, for me, that's always been libraries and bookstores. And I created, and movie theaters. I'm a huge movie buff, but I created in my head this place where people would, from a community that was in distress, would congregate and feel safe. And it went, oh man, this book went round the bend 8 or 9 times. But I love it where it landed. And the story is about an iconic bookstore in Minneapolis called the Over the Rainbow Bookshop. And when the book opens, one of the co-founders announces that she's selling it. And it's devastating to one of her daughters. Her other daughter doesn't really care. And then the third stakeholder in the bookstore is the partner of the other co-founder who has recently died. Mm-hmm. So the book itself is about these 3 people who form a very unlikely alliance and find themselves embroiled for very different reasons in trying to save the bookstore. And hijinks ensue, and but I love it because at its heart, it's like it's full of heart. And Elliot, who is the co-founder who died shortly before the book opened, he always had this theory that no one was truly a book hater, and all it really took to turn a non-reader into a book lover was finding the right book, putting the right book in the right person's hands at exactly the right moment. And he was very talented at it, and he's sort of, I like to describe him as book world famous. Yeah. He begins this newsletter where he does exactly that. He tells stories of putting the right books in readers' hands at the right moment. And the newsletter pieces actually are scattered throughout the book. The book
beautiful.
Is full of real recommendations. Yeah.
It's amazing how you did that. It's amazing. You talk about hijinks. And I think that that's one of the things that hooked me from Evergreen Tidings. We've talked about this several times, and I'll tell anybody who else will listen. The humor in your books, when you write that humor, there's 2 scenes in particular. First of all, towards the end middle end, there's a dinner scene. Yes. And every time I read that, if I need a laugh, I'm going right here to do that. And my copy is completely bookmarked and it's at home. But in Book Haters, there's a scene with Tom and I don't know if it's a wooden milk crate. It's at the disco party. I don't want to say anything more than that. I am telling you, I thought to myself, I went back and reread it. And it's like stickied in the book. How do you know when you're writing that that's going to hit the mark in a humorous way? Because I don't know how you do that. And there's all these other scenes, like at the beginning when Violet when she, listen, things happen to Violet. I love Violet, but you pulled me right in. So when you're writing humor like that, does it take a long time to write that scene? And when you do it, how do you know it hits?
Well, you never quite know it hits. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned that scene with Tom, because everybody has, that's what humor is. Everybody has their different perspectives on what the funniest scenes are. But I will give you two answers. One is, I am just a sucker for a quirky character. Like, give me a book with a quirky character and I'm hooked. And the other thing is, we writers are really observant. We're really watchers and listeners first. And I'm the same way in life. Like, I'll tell you a story. So 2 weeks ago, my husband and I, bless my husband, he's so patient. He's got a wife who gets himself into situations, because 2 weeks ago we were up at our cabin and it was Saturday morning and I had a hankering for pancakes. So we went out to our favorite breakfast place, and it was just stuffed full. I mean, it was beautiful fall day. Everybody was out and it was full. And the only table available was table 5. And when you're in a small town, there's 2 of you. If you're going to take a table for 5, you're going to have to be willing to share it. So we sit down. We know that people are going to, probably join our table. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, these 2 guys walk in, and there's 2 things I recognize about them immediately. One is they are so Minnesotan, like just so Minnesotan, like early 30s. They're up at the deer camp, and they had all the gear on. And I was just like, oh, these are people that I want to talk to. And then the next thing I hear was they were talking about how hungover they were. And I was, oh, I really want to talk to these people. So I'm drawn to these people. And sure enough, these guys were so funny. They were very hungover, but they started, I'm like, oh, tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me about your nights. Tell me about whatever. It turns out that they had, the night before, they were up at the deer camp in the trailer, but they hadn't brought their stuff for the campfire. But they had a 24-pack of beer, and the beer was cold. So they go outside and they're like, who's got a campfire? And they look around to spot the first campfire, and they decide those people aren't going to care if they're going to be willing to share their campfire with us as long as we bring beer. So sure enough, they find their party.
Oh my gosh!
By following the light of campfire, and it worked. It worked exactly the way they thought it would. And like hours later, they're crawling back into their campers, and I was just like, my husband and I got into the car, and I was like, that's why we moved back to Minnesota, right?
That's
and he's like, for breakfast? And I was like, no, because I want to live in a place where people find their parties by following the light of a campfire. I mean, I was just like, these are my kind of people.
That's what's so great, right? So I'm here listening to you talk about community. You're talking about the community of Minnesota, the community of your town, the community of the towns in all your books, especially in Book Haters. There are some Easter eggs for people who may have read Evergreen Tidings.
Yes, there are
Easter eggs for people who read The Kids Are Gonna Ask. One Easter egg involves one of my favorite characters from this book. So when I saw that person, when that happened, I was like, this is the best book I've,
You're not going to spoil anything. People love it when I tell them that Violet Baumgartner not only does she make an appearance, she has a bit of a role.
Oh my God. She's so funny.
Well, the other thing I should say is, I told you I would answer your question fully, and I got off on a tangent. But the other thing is I happen to have really, really good editors and writing partners. So like my writers group, one of the writers in my writers group is Josh Moling, who... Oh, yes. Yeah.
That book that he just wrote.
Yeah. It's called And There He Kept Her. He
sure did.
If you love crime, police, procedurals, if you love quirky characters, if you love reading about small town sheriffs, it's got this series. The first book just came out about a small town gay sheriff in Minnesota. It's called In There He Kept Her, and boy, is it creepy. Josh is not creepy, but Josh and my other writing partner are always pushing me to not pull the punches. He's like, you pull the punches too fast, because I'm always afraid of going, when making a joke, going over to the side of the absurd. And then when I do that, my editor pulls me back. She's like, okay, you've crossed over into the absurd. It's no longer funny. Bring it back. So I don't always know, but I have people that I trust, and that's what you need.
Oh my gosh. And one of them just happens to write police procedural about some pretty creepy, nasty things. It's hilarious to me that's great. That's a great book, by the way. And I'll recommend that in the notes for this after we're done. So, okay. So you've got this community. Violet Baumgartner walks into the bookshop and my heart went aflutter. And she is so funny when she's talking about, there's a line about getting her, is it Cezanne that she wants to get for her? It's just very funny.
She's her grandson is born in the first novel, and he's
right.
back in the second novel. He's 4 years old now, and she decides that every week she comes in and she curates different products for him, and she's looking for a book on cubism appropriate for a 3 or 4 year old. Yeah.
And then she talks about opera at some point. We're going to get into opera next week or something. It's just like some things like that are so funny. So I just want to share with everybody really quick. This is how the book opens, the Book Haters Book Club. There's a brief foreword which kind of carries throughout the book. And it starts off with, wake up, my darling readers, because I'm about to tell you how this book ends. One of our characters will find their way home. Another will discover a courage they never believed they possessed. And the third will find their heart. I'm getting the chills. That's me, not the book. Wait, you're saying, we've heard this story before. Ah, yes, you spotted your first clues. Good start, darlings. And that was it. I don't think anybody saw me for the rest of the weekend. I was like, this is it. I was like, don't hold my calls. I turned my social media off.
Aww.
And I just did. There's a person, Carrie is online, super lover. He is a big reader. And it's great. It's that whole forward. And then it says, no matter what we think we remember, a good story is the source of infinite treasure, of gems yet gone unnoticed, of wisdom whispered just for us in the moments we needed most. I mean, who are you?
I do think that I will tell you a story about that voice. It gives me the chills listening to you read it, because it means so much to me that it meant something to you, because I kid you not, sometimes I really do think there's like intervention sometimes, because I was really, really, really struggling to find the heart of this book. Absolutely struggling to find the heart of the book. And I knew on one level that the heart of the book was the bookstore. Mm-hmm. But how do you bring a bookstore to life? And I was walking across the house one day and I heard this voice in my head, and it was that opening line. It was wake up, darling readers. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I think I got it.
You did. Yeah. Look, you hooked me right in. I mean, the chills when I read that first line, and I was like, who is that? That's incredible. You did some job there. You really, really did. One of the things that they talk about, that in the description of the book, you say that Book Haters is a love letter to booksellers and librarians, dedicated to putting the right books in the right hands every day. Talk a little bit about that, because I love that homage to librarians and to booksellers, because that's what we do. People will come, I need a book. They'll tell you what's happening in their life. And you try to find, you know what you need? Let's stay away from this. Let's try this. Have you ever read this? So it becomes this like interview that you do. And I can't tell you how many times this book has gone out, like a lot. But so how do you get, what makes you sort of think to do that homage to booksellers and librarians?
Well, I'm a super fan for starters. I mean, I say in there, and it's not hyperbole, even though it sounds like hyperbole. I really do think librarians and booksellers are superheroes because you touch lives. You honestly do, like people who are in need or people who, regardless. I mean, you don't even have to get into the stories of how many, like, librarians have had to use Narcan or whatever it is,
Yeah.
But I know that you touched my life very, very early on as a kid. So first of all, I believe that wholeheartedly. But as I was writing the book, I knew I wanted to fill it with recommendations, and I kept finding myself thinking, yeah, but I want this recommendation to point to, something that's happening in the plot or this moment or whatever. And I don't know that I know the right book. I wonder who could tell me. And I was just like, duh, it was like a facepalm moment where I realized I know all these people who can tell me what the right book is. So I just started reaching out to people like you who have been so wonderful to me throughout my career and my life, and who are the real experts. I'm not the expert there. Y'all are the real experts. And so I started reaching out, and you, for example, told me exactly kind of the questions that you ask when people walk up to you, or, I'm looking for this, or I'm looking for that, and so you taught me how to unfold it. And
my goodness, thank you.
Yeah, and I had a dozen more conversations like that with other booksellers, and so what I started doing is I made the recommendations that Elliot makes, real recommendations from booksellers and librarians. They came straight out of your mouths, and you don't get credit for a particular title actually in the book. Because your advice is just like throughout. Instead of giving you a particular book title, I actually gave you a character.
When I saw my name as a character in your book, my head exploded. I thought, wait a minute, what's in here? What is in here? I didn't believe it. I am so honored that you did that. I really still can't believe it.
Yeah, so full disclosure, Tom, Elliot's partner, is a huge library fan. He's a big library patron, and his favorite librarian, who he goes to all the time for advice on research and how to pull things together, et cetera, is named Carol Ann. And yeah, so that was an homage. But I received so much help on this book that it's, I wanted to pay it forward. And so every bookstore that helped me with this book, I list in the back and encourage people to, visit their websites or their stores themselves. I call people out by name because I didn't write this book on my own, not by any measure.
And I think Kelly is in here from Texas, our mutual library friend whom I adore. It's all in here, and the book recommendations are great. Is there any book recommendation you didn't include?
Oh, yeah, there are some that I didn't include. I don't know off the top of my head what they are, but yeah.
And you and I have a big, one of the times we met together, we talked about, I think it was on your show, your podcast, your live show, I think it was Facebook. We talked about Britt Marie was here.
Yes. Yeah, see, another quirky character. I'm just a sucker. If I could someday if I could become, the Frederick Bachman of the U.S., man, I would die happy.
We're going to keep our fingers crossed. And he's got the winners just came out, part 3.
Came out, yeah.
And I just started reading it, and it's just so distracting. I mean, I can't. It's like your book. I'm like blinders on, social media off, and that's pretty much it. I do have a staff member who would like to know if you are in any book clubs yourself. That's from Michelle. Michelle is my executive producer. She hangs around and helps me with all these decorations. She does most of all of that. Do you have any book clubs that you're in?
Yes.
You do, Michelle. You were right.
In fact, I dedicate this book to my book club. I'll read it to you because I'll explain it. So I have been reading with the same group of women since 1997, probably. We were all young, new professionals living in San Francisco, living in big city, living the late night, like the life late in our 20s, first professional careers on our own, drinking a lot of cosmopolitans.
I was going to say drinking or reading, which was the...
Yeah, exactly. And doing both. And we started this book club. And in the years since, we've all, gone on to live our lives and we're scattered throughout the country. But for years and years and years, we did this thing called Traveling Book Club, where we would meet for Girls Weekend, but we would choose books that we had to read before we went there.
Great.
And now we just do the Girls Weekends, but we we Zoom for book club every month now. Right. But I actually dedicated it to I call them my forever book club.
Yeah, that was great.
Someday we shall ride camels while sipping cosmopolitans from our canteens.
Great.
They're all inside jokes from books that we've read over the years. There was one, about this woman who rode across Australia on a camel, and I think the cosmopolitans comes from
a really good mixologist.
Yeah, the Yaya Sisterhood, stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. They're just my dearest friends. And there's something about a book brings out a lot of emotion.
Yes.
And you jump into topics that you didn't expect to talk about.
For sure. So, yeah, because one thing, and that's what makes book clubs so amazing. And that's what makes your books perfect for this month and perfect for listeners and book club people. And if you start reading the Book Haters Book Club, you must try the Ruby Gin.
The what?
The Ruby Gin, isn't there?
The Ruby Gin!
I'm like, Gretchen, come on, the Ruby Gin.
I heard it as Norwegian, and I was like, the Norwegian?
Maybe the Norwegian Ruby Gin. I don't know.
I know. Well, rhubarb is it's like grows like a weed in Minnesota. And so it's rhubarb syrup and ginger ale. And then if you wanted to add something to it, I would suggest bourbon.
I will tell you it's delicious that way. That's all I will say about that. It is, and there's a helpful guide in the book at some point. You just to find the page and it tells you all about that. I do have to let you go in a few minutes, but I do want to know, now that, you've got 3 under your belt, and I know you started this in like 2020, we said, and it took, it had a process. Every book has a process that they go through. And it's crazy because I know how busy you are. You're on the book tour. You're just insanely busy. Anything you could tell us about maybe what you might be thinking about working on next? Oh,
yeah. Okay. Well, it's funny. I just literally got late last week, got the green light on my next book from my editor. So, and that's just the concept. When I say on my next book, it means like he likes the characters and the concept, and I need to.
This is how much you gave them.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's my
I gave them 50 pages and a full plot synopsis and everything. Yeah, we're making some changes, but this one's a little different. All my books so far have been family comedies, and this one is definitely comedic, but it is a book about 4 friends this time. And it's
the Mo Ring isn't going to have any influence on what happens to those 4 friends, right?
Yeah, no, and it's really it's a flashback in time between really 2 pivotal moments in a woman's life, like. Kind of like I was just talking about your late 20s where you're just getting on your feet and you're deciding who you are as a woman. And then in midlife, like a woman, the women are in their early 50s and splashing back and forth. So that's what I can tell you for now. I'll tell you. Oh, and it takes place in San Francisco this time. So.
Gosh. Okay.
Well, no, San Francisco and Palm Springs.
Yeah, I think that's great. I like that it's, listen, I'll just read whatever you do. So it doesn't matter where you go. It's fine.
Well, I don't know. I'm excited about it though. I feel the characters feel close to my heart. So I will be happy to chat about it as soon as I get more of a green light.
Yeah, that's great. We'll be here for all of that. Again, I am so honored that you took the time out of your book tour to be here to join Merit Patrons and everybody who's watching live. This is, we haven't done a Top Shelf Live in a while, so I'm so glad to be back doing this, and I'm so glad you were the first person that said, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, Gretchen, she's awesome. And my husband was like, oh my God, that Gretchen lady. He's like, I can't wait to meet her, because all I do is talk about you. So that's a good thing.
I got to get out to Long Island. I should say to anybody who's watching, if you do end up reading it as a book club and you want me to Skype in or Zoom in or whatever, I'm always happy to do that. Or if you have questions, you can just email me on my website and I will answer your questions. And then,
also on your website, you have products.
I do. I have merch. I have merch because some people have loved the tagline for the Over the Rainbow Bookshop is "Books and Rainbows are where dreams come true," and so there's merch that you can buy with that has the very retro 1980s Over the Rainbow Bookshop logo on it. You can buy
the baseball tees with the colored sleeves.
Yeah.
I've got my eye on the green one, so that, and I'm also going to get myself a water bottle. So I will be doing that when we wrap, because that's amazing. And listeners can find you on your website, but you're also on Twitter and Instagram.
At gr.anthony, or granthony, not dot. And then here it's gretchenanthony.writer. And yeah, and I've got a newsletter on Substack,
which is very funny. I love it.
Oh, thank you. You can find that on it's all on my website.
And you're still doing your show?
I'm not doing my show anymore. It was a balm during the pandemic. I do a podcast. It's like a 5-minute podcast every couple of weeks for my newsletter readers. It's called Friday Stories, and I basically just tell stories.
Okay. Yeah. And tell your cousin I said hello.
Cousin Matthew, that's right.
Yeah. Hi, Cousin Matthew. It's Carol Ann.
Oh my God, he's gonna love that.
He is gonna love that. Oh my God. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go, and I thank you so much again, and I thank all the viewers for joining us this evening. It is always a pleasure for me to bring authors right to your laptop or your cell phone or however you're watching. Next week on Thursday, I have the absolute pleasure of hosting author Wanda Morris for her brand new book, Anywhere You Run, and that kicks off our Thrill Fest, where I will be hosting one author every Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel for the rest of the month, and it's going to be amazing. So,
I'm gonna pick that up. Can I make a October recommendation?
Yes, please.
Just finished Killers of a Certain Age. Is that what it's called? Oh, it's so good. It was so good. And it's funny. If you like funny horror, someday I want to write funny horror. It's funny too.
I mean, I would love that. Do you have a horror book or like a horror story or a book that you like most? I
don't know, but I love Halloween so much. And like my favorite movie of all time is Shaun of the Dead. And it's
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Dare I do a bad impersonation? Hello, Sean. I mean, that's the movie that you sit down and you watch no matter where it is.
Yes.
No matter what you're doing, you stop and you just sit and you watch it to the end. This is why we get along. This
is why.
We have the same weird, wacky, fun, fabulous sense of humor. I will take that to the bank. All right, guys. Thank you all, Gretchen. Mwah.
Mwah.
And I will be in touch. Maybe we'll get together to do a podcast, which we'll get more into the things about how you write, your technical stuff, because I always ask a lot of technical questions when I have you on the hot seat. So thank you all, everybody, for joining, and we will see you next week. Gretchen, again, thank you very much for being here. I am so
thank you.
All right, guys.
I appreciate it. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.
Oh yeah. Cheers. My Norwegian. Yeah. Thank you, Cactus Sue. I appreciate it. Thanks, Super Lava. See ya.